You're listening to Shoe In, covering the ins and outs of all things footwear, from sneakers to heels, loafers to slippers, and every type of shoe in between. Brought to you by the FDRA, the Footwear Industries Association focused on retail, trade, politics, and fashion, helping create and enhance conversations on all things footwear. And now your footwear insiders, Matt Priest and Andy Polk.
Hey, Jasmine Pendergrass, one of the things I like most about this show is that we cover a variety of different topics. It's not just about the fashion side. It's not even just about the business side per se. Sometimes it's about the human side, right? As we are a relational industry, we're an industry that's connected in a variety of different ways. We come from a ton of different backgrounds, but we come together in pursuit of making, designing, and selling shoes to consumers worldwide. Mm-hmm. And a part of that discussion is maybe a subset of the broader national discussion about the importance of diversity within our respective organizations. Mm-hmm. And that's diversity of thought, diversity of experience, diversity of age, diversity of background, you name it. But having kind of all voices at the table so that, we serve our consumers more effectively and we deliver products to them and services to them that they find value in and can connect with. And so today's discussion is really important for the industry as a whole because it'll create line of sight into someone who's at the front lines of her company's efforts on the diversity side. Mm-hmm. And so I'm really excited about this conversation. Who do we have on the Shoe and Show program today?
So today we have the pleasure of having LaShae McCray on from RG Berry. She is the strategic account manager there for Deer Foams Footwear. I've had the pleasure of talking to LaShae a couple times. She's great energy. And one thing I love about our guests is that we never really know what we're getting into. We just kind of jump into this and then, it just turns out to be great or they have like an awesome story. So LaShae, welcome to Shoe and Show for your first episode.
Hello. I am so excited to be here with you guys. This is honestly a pleasure.
Awesome. Thank you. Well, I want to just jump in and because I do think you have a cool shoe story. And we like to get that from people because it's just like, how did you end up in the footwear industry? Some people it was very intentional. Some they just kind of fell into it. So we would love to know your shoe story.
Yeah, crazy story, actually. So I actually received my degree in biology pre-medicine. And so there's a joke around here in the company that I am Dr. Footwear. So that is actually my background, but I did research coming right out of college. And then crazy enough, I actually started in the stores. I was a district manager. I worked for the Aldo Group Incorporated and started there and then had an opportunity to get on the corporate side of the industry. Prior to, and I can speak on it, is with Aldo Group, they provided me the opportunity to be a strategic account manager where I manage 5 private label for DSW, actually. I was the liaison between the Aldo Group and DSW in Columbus, Ohio. And so that's how I got my start in the corporate industry. So I was with Aldo for 7 years and, it was great. But with the DSW ended up acquiring the Camuto Group. And because of that, I was, had the opportunity to either move to Montreal or figure out something else. And so I had the pleasure during my time to, while I was searching, to come upon RG Berry Incorporated, which is now where I am. And I am a strategic account manager for Deer Foams, managing some pretty important accounts, strategic accounts for us. And so, yeah, that's my story, but it's so funny. It is literally a joke. I'm a people person at heart. I love people. And I think that was why I wanted to go the medical route and then realize that I'm now a doctor of footwear and I love creating relationships and maintaining relationships with our partners and literally selling footwear for a living. But then also, I think with that passion, and I know we're talking footwear industry, but that is actually how I got into the diversity and inclusion piece of it, is that there's a passion there that, in these positions that we're in and in these corporate office buildings. And Matt, you said it so well in the beginning of this, is that, we literally have to serve our consumers. And, it is important to have a diversity of thought in the room. And then it is also important to understand that our customers are coming from different, both professional and personal backgrounds. And so we have to serve those diverse customers. And so that's literally my job in a nutshell, is that, I service a diverse consumer, and it's just extremely important to me to make sure that, I'm a representation. That representation matters.
Yeah, awesome. I love that. First of all, Doctor of Footwear should definitely be on your LinkedIn.
I know, I need to put that.
And also, I'm just curious, I think a lot of people have shared the experience of kind of like jumping into these diversity roles and it not really being, on their career paths, but they have a voice and they're passionate about these issues. So they kind of, fall into these roles as well. So can you kind of explain how you got into the diversity role at RG Berry? Like how did that happen for you? What was the thought process behind that?
Absolutely. I believe in transparency. So I will give you guys the honest to God truth, is that it was the murder of George Floyd that actually spearheaded. Listen, we had the conversations prior. For those who don't know, RG Berry is a smaller company. I think we have a little over 100 employees. And so we're not a huge company, but it was extremely important to us to really self-reflect and really look internally first. One of the things is that we wanted to have a say and have a stand, but we didn't want it to be inauthentic. And so with that being said, we said, you know what, listen, we need to create, although small, we can be mighty. And we want to create a diversity and inclusion advocacy council. And, I honestly, all kudos to our executive leadership and my CEO, Bob Mullaney, who was, it's important to listen. And so literally when that event happened, he called me personally and said, hey, I just wanted to check in on you. How are you feeling? And I think we've talked about this before, is that, we're not robots. We're humans. We have feelings. And so all of those employees that work for these, companies, they have feelings and they're affected. And I was deeply affected. And, it was, I don't want to say I challenged our company and said, listen, thank you for thinking of me and checking in on me, but now it's time for action. What are we going to do? And so he said, you know what? He accepted the challenge and he said, can you partner with me to start to institute change? And so we really did. We did a self-reflection on what we are promoting as a company and what we're doing internally. And it was both extremely important to us to start inward first, so that it was authentic when we actually make the changes, which honestly, I'll be honest, the meetings that we're coming out of that I just shared with you earlier are, how do we continue the conversation and continue to make sure that it's authentic in reference to our marketing in all different steps of the way. But yeah, so that's how it started, Jasmine, is really making sure that we were starting internally. So we created the Diversity Inclusion Advocacy Council. It is honestly growing. It started with 25 people and it is now up to 40 members. And again, I told you we're a small company. And really, it's just, we've asked for people to be allies and advocates. And we started with internal education first. So within that council, we have monthly meetings in which we have topics, whether we bring someone in to teach or I myself do the research and typically lead, and even most recently, we've had people step up to the plate and say, hey, listen, we want to talk about this topic and we want to do the research to better educate those employees, like those people around us. And it has been phenomenal. I get so much positive feedback a lot of times that it almost feels like church. It's like uplifting and it feels, you feel better and that you've taken something away from those educational tools. And I'm just proud to say that it's something that we thought was important that, we've created, but it's not for the moment. And I cannot stress that enough, is that the importance of making it part of culture, the importance of making it, not a moment of time. And that was really where I challenged our leadership was, yes, I'm okay with doing this, but just know that if you put me in this seat, it's going to be something that I will challenge at every point of the process and of the step, because I don't want it to be inauthentic, and I don't want it to be something that we just talk about because it's popular in the news, or it's popular, it's, I could go on for days, so I want you to ask your questions, but I'll just say this. I'll give you an example.
Sure.
Juneteenth, for instance, this is our second year just previously where our company not just only observed, but celebrated Juneteenth for the second year. Last year, there were a lot of companies that took part of it and understood the importance just because of the timing. But it was extremely important to me for it to not be just a one-time thing, that it needed to become a part of our corporate calendar. And that is what we have done. And so, when it even comes to recruiting and having, we've had a couple of different people that has joined our team, and they said when they looked at the corporate calendar, it said something to them. It because it's not, like I said, a one thing. It's not just because, or we're putting a Band-Aid over it. Listen, we're getting uncomfortable because we understand that uncomfortable conversations are important and allows for growth. So I would just say, like I said, it's not a moment in time. It's something that needs to be celebrated, and understanding that there's contributions to it all year around, and not just for, like I said, Juneteenth for one moment, or Pride Month. Pride is all year.
Right.
Yeah.
So, LaShae, let me ask you this, because I think the council idea was really a really smart one that you all made, because I fear that there are times when a company might just turn to the people of color in their ranks and say, hey, what do we need to do?
Yes.
And that's unfair, right? Because it's like, because not everyone's a LaShae. Not everyone is comfortable stepping up into the limelight and really have the leadership skills to direct. Some people just want to be the best general counsel they can be, or the best marketer, or the best designer, and supportive and active, but not lead. And so talk to me about how the council's created space for people to come in and to be a part of it, while not just putting this unfair or undue burden on the people of color within the four walls of the company.
Yeah. So the council, what was extremely important to the council, and I can tell you, to be honest with you, because we are not all there. We are not a fully diverse and inclusive council, to be honest with you, when you look at the numbers. But what we have asked is for people to be, again, advocates and allies. And we have created a safe place, a place in which we want to be transparent and make sure that we are having conversation in which where people are representing with different ideas and different thoughts and different backgrounds. And that's what you get from our council. I'll say this, that our leading thing is empathy. We want everyone to show up to the meeting and understanding the importance of empathy. I have to, because it would be remiss of me not to share something that we had a speaker come in at the very beginning that has stuck with me. And I actually say it before every meeting, is to understand that we all have individual prisms, how we view things, but understanding that and being able to maybe push ourselves to, one, lead with empathy, and that, to be able to maybe attempt to see from someone else's prism. There is an exercise, and I would encourage, I want to do it with you guys with FDRA, but it's basically where it's called our molecule. And what it is how we identify ourselves. And the biggest thing is how we identify ourselves. And then when something happens negatively to us, where do we go as to why we feel like that happened to us? And so it's an exercise, whether it's gender or sexual orientation, sexual just preference, if we have a physical disability, what our race is. And so, for example, is when I identify myself, I first identify myself as a Black woman. And then when I write my molecule out, I also then write it out as middle-aged or considered young to be in the positions that I'm in. And so, for instance, if we're sitting around in a table and someone says something, where do I go? Why, if I were to be offended, why? And so what came out of it that was so amazing, to be quite honest with you, is then we realized that we're all human. And I think we have a sense of, with being human, a sense of belongingness. And because of that, there was a wonderful example, is that we had a white male who said he identified not first white male. He talked about as far as his socioeconomic status and where he worked his behind off to get to. And so whenever someone questions or challenges something, he actually automatically goes there. Because he goes there first and that bothers him, then he was able to understand that if something bothers me in a certain way or I'm offended, I typically go to, because I'm a Black woman. You said that to me because I'm a Black woman. Well, he's like, you said that to me because, you think that I am spoiled and privileged. But truth be told, if you knew my story, this is where I am. And it was like an aha moment for the Diversity Inclusion Advocacy Council, that again, we're all human and we have where bias exists and we all have our different stories. And because of that, when you then come to the place in which you lead with empathy, now I can better understand you. I can try to. And so, that's a lot. And diversity inclusion, honestly, I always tell people it is an umbrella. There are so many layers to it. So I know I'm probably feeding you a lot, but I can just tell you in reference to Diversity and Inclusion Advocacy Council for RG Berry is that we are up for the challenge and we are trying to uncover those layers bit by bit.
Awesome. I think that exercise is so helpful. Like sometimes we need to be like sat still and really have people ask us those questions that really pull back those layers, because you don't necessarily think about it unless you have one of those like moments and somebody creates that space for you. So I love that. I definitely think that's something that we can all do. I'm also curious, FDRA purpose, or one of our purposes, is to bring the industry together. Mm-hmm. So do you think as an industry, I know what you're doing, within your organization, but as an industry, do you think it's more that we can do collectively together?
Absolutely. And I think that you guys as FDRA are great partners in reference to just what you guys represent in totality, with what we're already doing in the diversity and inclusion working groups. And I think that having representation from, all parts of the industry to come together, I know that, it is extremely important to us to potentially do, we spoke about this before, but a meet and greet or figure out a way where we can come together. Listen, it's been a tough year just with dealing with the pandemic, right? And I know we haven't been able to come together, and we're doing our best. It's so funny. Zoom exhaustion is real. So I think though that when I just talk about as far as human and belongingness, I do think what I would like to foresee is all of us come together when we're comfortable to do, something in physical realm versus virtual, because I do think that there's something to that with just the energy of the room and seeing like the passion. So absolutely. I know for August Market, we're trying to do a meet and greet for the industry. But if it doesn't happen in August and people aren't comfortable, it's whenever it's next, we are definitely wanting to partner and really spearhead that event, because I do think it is necessary. I also think that, a lot of times when we're all doing our own individual work, there's a great opportunity for us to share ideas. And I think, in reference to even like a resource library, because the only way that we are going to get better is with true partnership.
Yeah, I totally agree with you, LaShae, in the sense that each company comes at it differently, and not every company is on the same journey. They're in different parts of the country. Mm-hmm. They have different customers. They have different challenges. But I've found that those that are kind of honest with themselves mm-hmm. and actually have an empathetic corporate posture, mm-hmm. It really helps to really start the process in a productive way. And I guess one of my last questions for you as Dr. Footwear is what is ailing us in this space, And then what are the solutions? And I know, to kind of continue the analogy, there's not a magical pill that's going to solve all that ails us. And so it's more of a lifestyle change, right?
Yeah.
It's healthy eating and working out and all the things. So what are those things that you think will help create a healthier environment for everyone involved within the industry, so that we can look back and say with pride that we had these challenges, we set out and we accomplished them, and then clearly it doesn't end, right? So what's beyond that? How do we what 5 years from now, LaShae, what are we going to be talking about, hopefully from your perspective?
So again, I have to say that because we talked about it's broad and we have to peel back layers. So I'll tell you where I think is extremely important. First is internal education. Okay. And then the second part is an inclusive workplace. So what does that look like? Writing that down, and what does that look like? And then recruiting, hiring, and most would call it retention, but I call it nurturing, and that kind of ties into inclusive workplace is, do we have a workplace that supports diversity and inclusion, that everyone feels comfortable being in the space? And then I think the other importance is community engagement. I think the biggest thing is that we have the best way to know your consumer is to be connected to your consumer. And so, and where the industry is going is, listen, it may not be physical. Listen, e-com growth is, we saw it work, and it's not stopping. When we're just talking about industry in general, it is definitely heading more towards e-commerce. But how do we communicate even in that lane, as far as where we stand and what we don't stand for, and being very clear and being very trying to find the word. It's being very intentional is the word that I'm looking for. Being intentional. Being intentional is so crucial to a workplace. And then again, because what it does, then it carries across to our customers and our consumers. I'll tell you, to be honest with you, Matt, is that, it's not a one and done. It's a consistent roll up your sleeves and get to work. And what are we going to do in reference to that? And so I'm telling you, I love how you opened it up with it really starts with diverse thoughts, diverse actions. Who do you have at your table in leadership positions? Not just, a number that we're in lower positions. I think it's who's sitting at those leadership tables, and are we listening? And then based off of listening, how are we executing? It's 5 years from now, we're going to still be doing the work. Yeah. But I'm hoping that, it'll be better than where we are today.
Yeah, that's my hope as well, LaShae. And it's going to be better where we are today because of people like you. So I really, really appreciate your leadership, your passion, and your support of what we're doing. Jasmine, we've got our work cut out for us on our end, but I know that LaShae is going to be a part of our conversation and our efforts as well going forward. So I'm very excited. I'm actually very optimistic about the future in spite of the challenges of our past, because I think people are focused and intentional, and my hope is empathetic. And back to your church reference, it's a biblical value. So empathy brings a lot of collaboration and cooperation. So I'm all about that.
Very much so.
Well, folks, this has been another illuminating conversation for our Shoe and Show listeners. We are super excited that we will continue to be talking about diversity and inclusion for the industry for the years to come. And that's straight from the mouth of Dr. Footwear, because it is so important for our industry. And so we want you to be listening. We want you to be sharing these episodes with your friends, family, and coworkers. And if you'd like to be a guest on Shoe In, or you have some show ideas, hit us up at shoeinshow.com. We'll be happy to take those into account. Make sure you rate us. 5 stars is all that we take. We kick out. There's an algorithm that kicks out anything below 5 stars. Go figure. But we encourage you to rate us. And until next time, Shoe and Show is out.
Shoe In has been brought to you by the FDRA, the Footwear Industries Association focused on retail, trade, politics, and fashion, helping create and enhance conversations on all things footwear. For information about FDRA, visit fdra.org.